I think we can all agree movies are great, right? There's different kinds of them, like romance, fantasy, action, comedy, and not to mention horror. There's really good ones like Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Parent Trap, Moonlight, and everything Steven Seagal makes. There's pretty good ones like The Lovely Bones, It Follows, and Inside Out. And there's even bad ones, like so bad you feel physical pain from watching it, like The Mask 2, The Silence, and let me just say, if you type in A Quiet Place knockoff in Google, this movie is the first result, so do what you want with that information. And The Last Airbender, and that one really hurt me because I'm a big fan of the show. It's so good, but the movie is just gross. But then there's a fourth category that stands apart from the rest. A category that does not follow rules. They don't care about labels. They don't have a home because they don't fit in. Like that quirky 15-year-old girl who thinks she's different. They're too bad for the good ones and they're too good for the bad ones. Like, how does that even make sense, right? I'm talking about the movies that are so bad they're actually good. Well, decent anyway. Sharknado, Birdemic, The Room, White Chicks,
Making my way downtown, walking fast.
Anything Nicolas Cage is in. And today's star, wait for it, Zombeavers. You heard that, right? Zombeavers is a 2014 horror comedy directed by Jordan Rubin, who made his feature filmmaking debut. Produced by Armory Films and Bender Spink, which actually dissolved only 2 years later in 2016. Not to mention the co-founder of Bender Spink, JC Spink, passed away in 2017 due to a drug overdose. It says here it was made in association with
I wish I were high on pot news.
This movie is a 4.8 on IMDb and made a whopping $15K in the US and $44K worldwide, but I have a feeling it's made more sense then. As the title suggests, you know this movie is just pure debauchery and foolishness, but I think that's what gives it its charm. It knows its premise is nonsensical and it just doesn't care. So when you're wondering why this guy is snuggling up next to his foot like a body pillow, just remember it's all in dumb fun. The movie opens up with two workers from a medical waste management company, played by Bill Burr and John Mayer. And yes, that John Mayer, driving to some destination to presumably drop off the barrels of Kids' Choice Award slime. Here we find out Bill Burr had a gay phase and John Mayer took a dump on his friend's table. This wasn't even scripted. They're just that random. Bill takes this time to check his DMs and doesn't see there's a deer on the road. John warns him about it. Bill says he sees it, but obviously, he does not. This causes a barrel to fall off the back of the truck and go on a journey downstream, landing itself near a dam of beavers, and conveniently just starts spraying the slime all over the place. We're introduced to the title card, and then we see Jen, played by Lexi Atkins, crying in the bathroom because her boyfriend lied to her and said he had Coachella tickets. And I'm not really sure why they needed a green screen for this part. I didn't really pay attention until my second watch, but it doesn't really make sense. With all of the practical effects being used in this movie, from the beavers themselves to the gore, you'd think a gas station bathroom would be the least likely thing to need special effects. This dude wasn't even a part of the movie. He was just caught off guard by her pancakes. Jen and her two friends, Mary and Zoe, who I call Fish, Puss, and Boots, and you'll see why later, head to a countryside home in Indiana owned by Mary's cousin for a weekend girls trip. It was originally supposed to be a couples trip, but we find out Jen's boyfriend cheated on her, so they decided to uninvite the other boys too so she wouldn't be lonely and could forget about him. Right off the bat, Zoe treats us to a few pictures of her boyfriend Buck's little soldier, which I'm gonna cover with a picture of Neil deGrasse Tyson for obvious reasons. We then see this random kid fishing, and of course he gets got. I mean, you know, that's just how these movies go, so moving on. They get to the cabin then, do you see the boots? Just wait for it. And you'll notice very quickly Zoe turned up the accent to 11 for this role, and she won't let you forget it. A neighbor comes over to greet them and Zoe really, and I mean really, tries to cement it in your brain she's the edgy, fearless one.
All right, well, it's a pleasure. Sup, biatch?
The girls get settled in, and in traditional horror movie trope fashion, there's no phone service, only a landline. The girls decide to go swimming, and here's where the sinning starts happening. Zoe uncages her nips, and Neil, help me out again. I will admit they are nice, but that's not what we're here for. Jen gets curious by the beaver dam and goes over hoping to see one. Here is where we meet Smith with a Y, and he does his very best impression of a creepy backwoods neighbor. They head back in after that, and later we see them enjoying popcorn. When there's a bang at the door.
What was that?
Oh my god, there's a bang at the door!
Zoe goes to investigate, and I say that loosely because she's oddly confident and says,
Hey, serial killers, we got 3 hot babes in here who haven't had sex in a really long time.
if this were a hack and slash film, those serial killers probably would have taken you up on that offer, Zoe. All the tension leaves when we find out it's their boyfriends just messing around. We see what Buck looks like. Mary's boyfriend is played by Kevin from Fred, and Jen's boyfriend is played by the guy who played Zeke from Zeke and Luther, except he put the skateboard down and picked up a bowl of chili. They weren't supposed to show up, but Jen decides to let them stay anyway because if they only had 3 characters, how would the movie fulfill a decent runtime? I can't show you what happens next, but it rhymes with cloud flex. Jen decides to take a shower and the Zombeaver action begins. The wildest part about this interaction is the beaver hid in the cabinet stealthily waiting to strike. He started in the bathtub, then decided, nah, I'm gonna kill him with this move.
I've seen a real beaver before up close, so...
Yeah, me neither.
Well, maybe you should try going down on me once in a while, Buck.
There's a reason for that. The kid smacks the beaver up with a bat, wraps it up in a bag, and leaves it outside. Oh no, it's gone. Oh my god, no. What is happening? This is so crazy. Maybe one of the neighbors took him and fried him up. So the full group goes swimming again, and we find out Mary was the one who was messing around with Jen's boyfriend. Jen, I'm no animal expert, but it seems like you have a beaver and a snake problem. That's a cold world we live in. Mary betrayed her friend for a guy that looks like an Arby's manager. Buck for some reason is wearing his beanie in the lake, but that's the least of his worries, because after Jen warns the others about something that touched her leg, he gets drugged underwater with both feet attached to his body, and resurfaces with one of them in his hand. They all rush to the wooden deck to get out of the water, and Jen, being the closest to land, said, "I'ma head out, I'll see y'all later," as she goes inside to call for help. Little does she know these beavers are smart as shit, so they cut the phone lines. I know what you're thinking. How would a beaver know how to do that? Beavers should be cognizant to what that little box does, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. We get to see more of the glorious practical effects that makes this movie Academy Award worthy, and unfortunately Jen gets ambushed in the house by the original beaver that was peeping in the bathroom earlier. We know this because it's nearly severed in half from taking a beating with a bat the previous night. He comes back for seconds and Jen gets a scratch on her leg. Remember that. Kevin punts a beaver and one tries to kiss Jen, so no one's having a fun time anymore, except for me.
Sorry, buddy. Surf's up!
See, that's where I draw the line. They make it back inside after Zeke sacrifices Zoe's dog. Meanwhile, Jen's beaver has the best seat in the house, but gets stabbed because he was being a little aggressive. Later in the evening, the tension is still high as the group figures out what's going on. Buck is cuddling his foot like a stuffed animal, and Zoe's still mad about her dog being eaten. And to be honest, so am I. She decides she's not going to be the only one hurt, so she sells Mary out and tells Jen she was the one he was cheating with, but she doesn't really care at this point. The beavers pull up and start performing some sort of ass-clapping ritual, so they decide they can't just sit around because Buck, needs to get to a hospital if they want to reattach his foot. Kevin and Zoe decide to go together, while the rest stay in the cabin for some reason.
You should just leave.
Jump scare! Loretta and her husband hear the commotion and she wants to investigate, but her husband is chilling.
Oh, it's just those kids scissoring each other to Lady Gaga.
A beaver magically switches places with their dog, and the rest is history. We catch up with Kevin, Zoe, and Buck attempting to go get help, but oh no, the beavers have blocked their path with a tree. Kevin tells Zoe to head back to the cabin because he's going to try to go the rest of the way on foot and we'll be back. Remember when I said I called her fish, puss, in boots? This is why. Buck sits up and says, "I'm sorry for not going down on you," and, well, I'll just play the clip.
Oh, well, I'm gonna go back and eat all of it one day. It just smells so bad down there.
You get it now? Because she wears boots and... I'm very proud of myself for that joke. Anyway, Immediately after that, before they can even drive off, we hear Kevin scream. Lo and behold, this man got crushed by a tree and the beavers celebrated their victory. It was a very anticlimactic death for our guy, and I reckon the fella forgot rule number 17, maybe the most important rule of all.
Don't be a hero.
I'd like to make a case for this being the worst death of the whole film, even though, as we'll see, there are more gruesome deaths. Just because of sheer embarrassment, you know? Like you just got through saying, I'm gonna go get help, I'll save the day, we'll all get out of here, and then you get crushed by a tree 20 seconds later. I just think that's so disrespectful. How could you let that happen? I'm gonna take a short detour for a second, hear me out. This actually reminds me of Todd's death scene from Final Destination 1. To me, that bathtub scene was one of the most impactful deaths of the whole series, even though plenty of other people died in more horrific ways. Todd died from strangulation due to his clothesline wrapping around his neck after slipping on water. For Final Destination standards, that's child's play. But this scene shows something I don't personally remember seeing in other titles. As he's shaving, with no hair on his face I might add, a distorted figure moves in the way of the mirror and water is seen creeping out from behind his toilet. This confirms death's presence when the other titles kind of have a sense of plausible deniability about the topic. Todd trips, the clothesline strangles him, and after it's all said and done, the water just reverses back into his toilet as if it's had a mind of its own. This compared to seemingly improbable mishaps like a circuit being cut or falling off a high bar just hits different. But anyway, back to the Zombeavers. After Zoe sees Kevin's lifeless, pathetic body under the tree, Smith shows up and offers to help them, so they hop in his truck and take off. They try to get back in the cabin but are ambushed by the beavers, so they cut through a grassy field towards the neighbor's house. We find out the neighbors are dead. Rest in peace to a real one. Smith helps himself to the chicken in the fridge and gives us all a helpful tip should a limb ever get chewed off by a beaver.
We're supposed to do, right? Keep it on ice?
Well, not directly on ice, it kills tissue.
Well, shit.
He's right, you know. You keep it in a plastic bag and then place it on ice. Well, you remember I said Jen got scratched on her leg, right? Yeah. Well, she walks into the room where Mary's resting and crawls on the bed and pins her hands up. I'm not sure what to make of this because Mary says,
You never cared that Sam cheated, did you? You only cared that it was me.
And Jen doesn't say anything to confirm or deny this. She just kinda... Yeah. The zombie beavers weren't the highlight of the movie. This is. Is it bad that I'm aroused right now? Don't answer that. Smith heats up a knife to cauterize Buck's wound. They get distracted by some noise outside and Buck turns while they're looking out the window. The Rufus comparisons are starting to make more sense, huh? Well, he eats Smith's face and Zoe takes off upstairs only to get her hair ripped out by the lady neighbor because she was being disrespectful earlier. She doesn't have any more bullets in the rifle Smith was using, so the next best thing was to jump out the window. Back at the cabin, Mary and Zeke start playing Whack-A-Beaver before running to the bathroom. Look, man, these two start stripping the check for bites and then the hormones take over and these two idiots start making out. There's just so much wrong with this. Not only were you two a part of the original cheating scandal, but you only just witnessed your friend turn into a whole ass beaver as she drooled on you. And there are many more of those beavers outside the door waiting on you right now. How can you be thinking about sex at a time like this? The next part is just pure karma. Jen gets her comeuppance and busts through the floor and... Wait, you can see it's just a perfect paper cutout. Before I move on to what she does, let's take a one question multiple choice quiz. Does she A, bite Zeke's toes, B, claw at Mary's stomach, C, growl and pretend to attack them, or D, bite Zeke's gold member off? It was D. I told you. Karma. Mary runs out of the bathroom to see the whole place is up in flames because one of the dumbass beavers decided to chew on an electrical socket. Zoe comes busting in through the wall to save the day and the two take off in Smith's truck. Along the road, we see a beaver-fied Smith just hanging out, and he fires his gun at them. I didn't know they could do something like that, but the rules are being written as we go. She crashes into a tree, and in the distance we see a Zombeaver bear? All their old pals that are now zombies start trying to say what's up, and Jen jumps on top of the truck. Zoe slams the brakes and says,
I never liked that bitch anyway.
which I think is so crazy. Y'all were supposed to be friends. It wasn't clear that Jen was some type of outsider in y'all's group, but Mary sleeps with her boyfriend even after she's a zombie, and now you say you never liked her? Wow. They end up back at the same place where Kevin died, and we see one last look at his pitiful, now zombified body as Mary and Zoe try to get distance between them and the chaos. Mary pulls one last snake move by pointing a gun she found in Smith's truck at Zoe, but before she can do anything, she turns. Look, don't ask me when she was bitten or scratched, because I don't know either. I thought she possibly got some of Jen's saliva in her mouth from before, but that didn't happen, so your guess is as good as mine. Zoe cuts Mary down with an axe and continues forward. She's walking forward and sees a car approaching in the distance. You would think she would be the lone survivor, but you're thinking too small. The driver is Bill Burr from the opening, and he's still texting and driving, so he slams right back into Zoe as the exit title screen appears, and thus concludes Zombeavers. All in all, I enjoyed this movie for what it is. If it made any sense with its decisions, it probably would have lost some of its whimsical appeal. The performances are pretty good, all things considered, and I had a bit of fun laughing and making fun of the ridiculous parts. I give this movie a 5 out of 10 simply for staying in its lane and not trying to push forced reasoning within an obviously facetious body of work. It's better to be a horror movie that knows it's dumb so you can expect as much, but when it takes itself seriously and sucks, it becomes exceedingly annoying. I hope y'all enjoyed this video and learn a thing or two about what not to do should you come across a bunch of Zombeavers in countryside Indiana. Thank you for watching.